What does the future look like for your business? By the end of this video, we're going to remove the guesswork so you have a clear vision on where you're going. We'll start off by evaluating your existing plans. Then we're going to go over the number one thing that many businesses, especially small businesses, don't do that would save them in really hard times. And lastly, we'll uncover what you need to do right now to get ahead of the curve and thrive. All right, let's just start off by setting the stage. We need to have an honest moment here. How much have you planned in your business? Do you know what your goals are over the next year, 5 years, 10 years? And then most importantly, is it written down somewhere? Or actually, you know what, I fib. That's not even the most important thing. Although it's important, the most important thing is if it's written down somewhere, is your entire team aware of it? Has it been communicated to the point where all of them can recite where the company is going? Do they know your mission, vision, and goals and the strategic plan that's going to carry you along for the next 5 to 10 years? If not, you kind of want to start there to make sure that you have clarity on where you'd like to go. Now, this is assuming that everything falls according to plan and that we don't have any kind of outside influences, which we know that's typically not how life really works. But we do have to have at least this ideal plan already written out so that everyone on the team is all aware and working towards that same goal. The next question is have you done any scenario planning? It's not unusual for business leaders to create a plan and work that plan as if it was the only real possibility. But we all know that life happens. There's hurricanes, there's labor shortages, there's pandemics, there's a whole host of things that can happen, some of which are easy to see as possibilities. Others, we would have never seen them coming. But do you do any scenario planning where you think about what are 2 to 3 alternative futures that are high possibilities? So I'll give you a personal example. It's not a business example, but it'll illustrate this point. I live in Houston, Texas. Houston's a wonderful city, except for one thing, we get hurricanes. Usually once every other year, the water comes on land and tries to kill us. It makes living there very exciting, right? So right before hurricane season, it's normal for my husband and I to ensure that we have a closet full of food that can last us for a couple of weeks. We have non-perishables, we have flashlights, we have extra water, we have all of these supplies that will get us through a hurricane. So if we happen to be flooded in where we can't get out of our neighborhood, we still have the supplies we need. Well, that's scenario planning. Many people don't like to consider the fact that there could be a hurricane, and there are people who've lived in Houston their entire lives that never prepare for hurricanes because they always say things like, oh, my area never floods, or, we'll be fine. And what's interesting is that there are a lot of places that have started flooding that never flooded before, and that's really all over the world, not just Houston. There have been people who have been caught unprepared who wish they had prepared ahead of time, right? So, scenario planning in your business is simply looking at very real alternate possibilities, positive or negative. And I encourage you to look at the negative possible alternatives more so than the positive, because it's pretty easy to adjust to the fact that maybe your supply costs are going down so you get to save money, or there's an influx of new customers and so you have to figure out how to serve them, but you're excited your business is growing. It's a lot harder to prepare for the negative things that we don't like to think about. So here's how scenario planning can help you. Remember how I said that we plan for hurricanes? Well, we have had hurricanes, major hurricanes, and it's come in handy that we had those supplies in our house. But a couple years ago in Houston, something really unusual happened. We had a freeze. And the storm that caused that freeze just rotated over the city for several days, and so that freeze locked in place. There were tons of people that lost power. There were people who lost water. In my house, we still had electricity, but my entire block didn't have water for several days. But guess what? Even though we couldn't drive because Houston doesn't have the capabilities of putting ice on the road, we don't have the supplies or the type of equipment needed to do that. So it's really unsafe to go out into the street. So even though we couldn't get outside of the house to go to a grocery store, many stores were closed, we didn't have water through our faucet, we had tons of water, we had tons of food, so much so we invited other family members that could get to us to come to our house. Why? Because through scenario planning, we determined that a hurricane was possible. But even planning for that hurricane, being open to that alternate possibility that wasn't desired, opened us up to being prepared for a different type of disaster, a different type of alternative future. And so this is what this type of preparation does. In my industry as a speaker, there were speakers before the pandemic who already invested in starting to be able to do virtual presentations, virtual keynotes, and even though it wasn't that popular, they were trying to learn how to use all the technology. Well, guess what? When the pandemic hit and all of our calendars cleared for our in-person events, all the speakers that already had the equipment to be able to handle virtual immediately started getting new clients, and their businesses actually exploded during the pandemic. This is what we want to do for you. And so you want to get your team together and start thinking about what are some alternative scenarios. When we think about our future over the next 5 to 10 years, what are the drivers? What are all the things that can impact our future? That means things like laws, economic things, or things that are going on economically. It could have to do with the labor force. Start thinking about all the different things that could impact the future of your business. And then start listening and paying attention. You're doing some horizon scanning. You're seeing, are we starting to see some changes here? Are we starting to see in our customer feedback is shifting a little bit and they're a little bit less happy than they used to be because they're wanting this thing over here? Are we starting to see little signals, little weak signals that maybe this new technology is going to be the technology of the future, or this other industry is adopting this and we're somewhat similar. We do home lawn care, but the farming industry is doing this, and I could see how a smaller version of that technology could impact us. So as you start to collect all this information, you and your team members can start to look at, okay, this is the future that we have planned. This is the future that we planned for, but what are two pretty likely alternative scenarios? And again, I encourage you to look for things that are slightly more negative, because preparing for those will usually help you when it comes to preparing for many other different types of scenarios you're not even thinking about. Kind of like that hurricane versus freeze story that I just shared with you. I still have some more information I'm going to share with you, but if you want a little bit more information about scenario planning, I encourage you to check out my video called How Can Scenario Planning Help Managers Predict the Future? All right, let's keep going now. After you've done your scenario planning, start thinking about your contingency plans. If the absolute worst does happen, what do you have in place? What can you shift? For instance, let's say that you experience a labor shortage of 15% that you weren't planning for. What contingency plans do you have in place? Are there already resources you've identified where you can outsource? Are there strategic partners that you can partner with for outsourcing? If you find that your supply costs are going up, and maybe the country where you're getting a great deal of your goods from, maybe they're on strange terms with our country. Well, is there an alternative country that has similar products that could make that swap very easily? You want to start developing those relationships ahead of time as part of a contingency plan. So if we want to plan for the future, we want to make sure that we're planning for alternative futures so that we're covered either way. If you do all of the things that we talked about in this video, the future looks bright for your business. Your future is only as good as the planning that you've put into it. Other than that, you're just relying upon luck, and that is not a business strategy. But if you want a little bit more information on planning for the future, if you notice in the description of this video, there's a link to download my Future Ready Playbook. This playbook is full of activities and tactics to help you better strategically plan for the future. Make sure you go right now and download your copy.